America's legendary highway, US Route 1, stretches some 2,000 miles all the way down the east coast of this incredible country to its end in Key West on the Florida Keys. The route takes in a staggering 12 states and links some of the country's most famous cities, embracing a huge diversity of cultures and climates that has made this fascinating country so addictively eclectic. The first 500 miles of this journey from Boston to Washington has turned out to be a real ride of emotions, dogged by stifling traffic, horrendous road surfaces, terrible weather, and a motorcycle whose behaviour has turned out to encapsulate the whole ethos of the East Coast: unpredictable, opinionated, stubborn, and always in your face. It's a Saxon Crown, one of the most radical American choppers you can buy off the shelf. The urban sprawl of the first part of this ride I knew was going to be difficult, and it was. It certainly came nowhere near to being one of the world's greatest motorcycle rides, but now we're heading out of Washington to ride the remaining 1,500 miles to Key West into what I pray will be the true rural America. My enthusiasm is renewed, delighted to be briefly accompanied by some other bikers, the first I've seen since Boston. It's fair to say that around these parts they're an endangered species due to the car drivers' total disregard for their very existence. With night falling, after some 60 miles I ride into Fredericksburg, our stopover for tonight. Fredericksburg is delightfully colonial, with a long illustrious history of mainly war and carnage. This town has seen its fair share of brutal battles during the American Civil War, the legacy of which has led to one of the strangest nighttime city tours, a ghost hunt accompanied by a small and adorably raving guide dressed in period costume going by the name of Mrs. Beale. Here in Fredericksburg, there was ostensibly an awful lot of death.
Yes.
Hence why we could have a chance of seeing a ghost.
Exactly.
Mrs. Beale has implored me to bring my camera in case of a sighting, so feeling a bit nervous, we approach our first location.
What was that? That was a car.
Oh, right, okay. It quickly seems obvious to me that the trick to enjoying Mrs. Beale's tour is having the ability to visualise strange apparitions made up of patterns in the stonework.
Do you see the shape of a hat, a face and shoulders? He's looking right at you.
No. As hard as Mrs. Beale tries to point out the shapes, I really don't have a clue what she's on about.
Do you see the large head?
No. Give Mrs. Beale her due. Her perseverance is unwavering.
If you go straight up on the roof between the two windows, right at the peak of the roof, there's a large white head, like a skull, coming down from the top of the roof. Do you see him?
No.
How about below the window? Do you see the horse? He's running towards the bridge.
No. Well, it's no good. I can't see anything and never will do. So graciously, Mrs. Beale and I decide to call it quits before it gets embarrassing. Next morning, Fredericksburg's stunning historical beauty is all pervading. Well, last night's ghost hunt was a laugh, but you got to admit, really, Mrs. Beale's absolutely bonkers. Now, Fredericksburg this morning is absolutely beautiful, full of 18th century architecture, and also the hotels here are an absolute delight. And one in particular, it's the Richard Johnston Inn, and if you want a real taste of meticulously preserved colonial living, you've come to the right place. In fact, this little bijou hostelry has been voted by the magazine Southern Living their favourite B&B in the whole of the South. Well, we're leaving Fredericksburg to try and do 200 miles to Raleigh, or Raleigh I think they call it here. Now I hope the riding is going to get better now we're really out of the urban sprawl. But, like always on this trip, we're facing a couple of other problems. The first one is that there are supposedly isolated thunderstorms today going down to Raleigh. But the second and most worrying is that once we go into the Carolinas, North and South Carolina, for some reason, there's a petrol shortage. Now, this bike does 75 miles to the tank. So that means we could be stopping about 3 times on the way to Raleigh, with perhaps a 3-hour wait in each petrol station. As I head out of Fredericksburg, I realise that we're now in Virginia, our 7th state of the ride, famed for its tobacco production and being second only to Texas in the amount of annual executions. The one heading down to Raleigh delights, and worries of rain and lack of petrol are put on hold. Suddenly, I'm actually feeling like I'm riding the American dream again. Wide open expanses of tarmac, only occasionally interspersed with the Tin Box Brigade. If this is the state of things to come, then perhaps the week-long wait was worth it. But with 70 or so miles showing on my intermittent speedo, as ever, time to get some gas.
Well, that's what we came for, eh? After 5 days doing New York and all that kind of stuff, we're here in what Riding America's all about. And so far, the rain stayed off. That's what it's all about, at last.
But there's always someone to put a dampener on my excitement.
Don't start on the Ewan McGregor thing. The guy thought I was Ewan McGregor. Well, where's my support team? Nowhere.
Back on the one, contemplating how I'd react to spending a night under canvas with Charlie Borman, I've decided to make up some time and detour round the city of Richmond. The last thing I want to do is get stuck in yet another urban nightmare when there's a way to avoid it, so I'm taking the interstate round Richmond. The interstates are actually fun to ride round these parts, with not much traffic and the odd cool old biker to pass the time of day with. But as usual, my contentment is short-lived, as the forgotten threat of isolated thunderstorms may become a reality.
Well, that was going really well till the rain set in. So I'm just going to put my waterproofs on. We've had to make time going around Richmond to get on the 95, and now we're on the 85. And we've still got about 140 miles to go. Now the weather does seem to be clearing, but I think I'll just take precautions and get the wet weather gear on.
Well, there's one career it's soon obvious I should avoid at all costs. It's being a weather forecaster. It hasn't cleared up at all. In fact, it's basically gone pear-shaped. Hitting rain like this on my beast of a chopper is a horrible experience. Firstly, there's no front mudguard, so you get a shower of water in your face. Secondly, with virtually no rear mudguard, you get a plume all the way up your back. And thirdly, with a fat rear tyre, the bike squirms around on the film of water on the road. Perhaps I will take up that night with Charlie Borman instead. But at least the misfire hasn't returned, and so far there's no lack of petrol. But as I head into North Carolina, with the sun reappearing, my temperamental steed decides to throw in its pennyworth to the day's proceedings. And if there's one thing I hate, it's looking like a plonker stranded at some traffic lights.
Oh, I'm pushing it off the road.
Just as I'm about to get off the bike and lay into it with a wet boot, it suddenly sparks into life. But now, it's also beginning to get really hot, so better pull over and disrobe.
Well, that was exciting, just to round the trip off. It just stalled. Well, I'm boiling hot now. The joys of different weather conditions.
So after disposing of the wet weather gear, it's only a few miles into Raleigh, and with the gorgeous evening sun for company, yet again my flagging spirits are renewed, especially as I'm off to a date that I've been secretly looking forward to since Boston.
Well, as you can see, we haven't come to Raleigh just for the scenery. We've come to meet up with some kindred spirits.
Now, if I was really honest, I thought I was going to meet up with some decomposing Caroline and Crusties on their Harleys. Instead, I'm confronted by a load of hardcore rude boys sporting an unbelievable array of raked-out Japanese rice burners. What an utter treat.
Now these guys are the Turning Point Motorcycle Club here in Raleigh. And something tells me, maybe because everyone's been taking off their number plates, that we might be in for some trouble.
So let's get one thing absolutely straight here. What these guys are doing on a public highway scares the living hell out of me, and not for one moment do I condone what they're up to. I'm just dumbstruck by what mayhem is going on around me, but it's quite apparent that these fellas mean serious business in the way they handle their machines. This is an evening that I will surely remember for the rest of my biking life.
That was a new take on motorcycling. These guys can ride bikes. Wow. So that's just a normal evening out, is it, guys?
Normal day out.
How do the police react to all that? Your antics on the road? Do you have an understanding with them or not really?
Yeah, we got an understanding. They turn their lights on and I go.
You're much more than just a motorcycle club. I mean, guys were telling me just before, you're a family, aren't you?
Yeah,
you look after your own.
Whatever we need, we do it internally. We don't have to go outside our club for nothing. We need anything. We got lawyers, we got tow truck drivers, we got bondsmen.
And you've also got girls as well.
They have ladies that ride.
Coming through.
They have ladies that ride.
Yeah.
Not stunt ride.
And they ain't
that
even
ride.
legal height, but they ride.
That's
As far as the club atmosphere, man, we really believe in like this family thing. Like we strong and hard. We fight like a family, and we fight together like a family. You know what I mean? So it ain't perfect, but it's perfect in our world. Next year, I'm running for president of the United States in 4 years. In 4 years, I'm not only gonna be turning point president, but I'm gonna be your president.
I think there'll be some changes in the highway code.
Where are you headed from here?
Oh, I don't know, Key West? That's where we're going to end. Yeah.
We might ride halfway with you.
Oh no!
Whatever you might think about the Turning Point Motorcycle Club and its antics, for me, it's been a real pleasure to spend an evening with them. I have to admit, I was slightly nervous to start with, but these guys and girls have made me feel so welcome. It's quite apparent that the club has instilled a feeling of belonging, and their lives now have a purpose and respect, instigated by their love of bikes. If only the powers that be could understand what a difference this sense of pride can do to a community that's all too easily cast aside. And to top it off, I even get the t-shirt to remember one crazy evening.
I've been there, got the t-shirt, guys. Thank you so much.
This evening has been wonderful for me, mainly because it's given me a break from the rigours of actually doing this ride, something that I'll forget about till tomorrow. Next morning, I wake up to a rather bleak motel in Raleigh, but I'm refreshed and ready to face today's problems.
Well, the bike's looking a bit worse for wear after yesterday's thunderstorm fun. We're heading down now to Darlington, which is about 150 miles south on Route 1, down into South Carolina. Now, as always, there's a couple of problems. The first problem is avoiding the rain, which we're assured there isn't any today. The second problem is this ongoing battle with getting petrol. Now, hopefully, we'll be able to do that. Otherwise, we're just going to be stranded.
Well, just across from the motel, we'll find out the reality.
Well, there we go, really. No petrol. Well, that really is a nightmare. So we might be in North Carolina for longer than we thought.
So with a little dribble of gas left in the tank, I think it's best to risk running out and head down a somewhat soulless Route 1 to see if my luck changes. And for once it might have done, as another gas station appears after only a few miles.
Well, this may look hopeful. Otherwise, we might be a bit stranded. A result! They've got gas, that's fantastic. Good, so we'll get a little bit, well, we'll definitely get 75 miles further down the road. And what a boring road it is, huh?
I don't know what it is about this route, but just as I start complaining, it has a habit of then producing a totally unexpected and fabulous surprise. Time and time again, I get the feeling that someone up there is saying, keep going, it'll all work out. And sure enough, just out of Raleigh's suburbs, the road goes down to one lane, the sun beats down, and most of the motorised detritus vanishes to leave a quite breathtaking ride. I can now kick back, revel in the sun, the bike, the road and the stunning scenery, and think to myself yet again, why on earth did I start to lose hope? But then, suddenly, just as the one lulls me into a belief that my troubles are eventually over, out of nowhere and with no warning it starts to rain. But still, after such an amazing ride, I'm not going to allow it to dampen my renewed lust for life.
Well, all good things have to come to an end, and that 100 miles was utterly glorious. I'm soaking wet that last couple of miles. I could have really done without. But anyway, look, we've had a fantastic ride down here to Darlington, and we're here to experience what Darlington is all about.
And it's NASCAR racing. Darlington Raceway is one of the most famous circuits in the US and is home annually to the Darlington 500. 500 miles of these monsters careering round the legendary banked oval circuit at an average speed of some 180 miles an hour. NASCAR racing is a religion here, and Chris, as the owner of the circuit, is one of its deities.
Chris, look, NASCAR and the Carolinas go hand in hand, don't they? This is where it all started.
Exactly. This literally is where it all started. You know, this was the first paved super speedway in NASCAR's history. Before Darlington was built, they raced on dirt at a lot of different tracks, but this was literally the very first paved super speedway that NASCAR ran on.
One thing I've suddenly realised is that, unlike Formula One, if you're sitting in the stands up there, you can see the whole race.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's what makes this place especially so special, is there really isn't a bad seat in the house. You can see everything.
Now, to get an idea of the banking, you just don't get an idea of this on television. It is so steep. And look, if I just roll this bottle down, you just get an idea of it. Quite incredible. 43 cars race on every race, over 500 miles at some 200 miles an hour. Quite astounding. My whole thought of NASCAR has completely changed.
And driving around this circuit, you get an even better idea what this sport is all about. Brutal power and all-out speed. There's even no laptops or telemetry allowed on race day, so the drivers are out there pitching their true driving skills against one another, with no computerized nerd anywhere to be seen. A refreshing change from Formula One's brain-numbingly boring reliance on technical geeks in branded fleeces. But if you can't get here in May to see the annual spectacle, there's still this fascinating museum open all the year round to learn about the history, the legends and the crazy cars that have all made Darlington the true home of NASCAR. Next morning I'm blessed with bright blue skies, 80-degree temperatures and the most fabulous roads. We're hopping off the one from Darlington to make the short ride across country to Bishopsville, and what a glorious road it is. The Carolinas are proving to be home to some exquisite riding. My troubles surely are now behind me, and I can immerse myself in the sounds, sights and most importantly the beautifully fragrant smells. For me, life could not be more perfect than this, and it's so exciting to think as we head into America's true south, this could really be the state of things to come.
Well, what a superb ride. A lovely way to start the day, about 20 miles from Darlington to here in Bishopsville. Now, rural America has, like everywhere in the world, I guess, some eccentrics. We've come to Bishopsville to meet one of theirs.
And Bishopsville's is actually world famous in the fine art of topiary. Pearl has been indulging in his passion for creating elaborate shapes out of hedging and fir trees since the early 90s. He's truly a legend in the worldwide gardening community, and it's very easy to see why.
How on earth did you get into topiary?
Well, the idea is using my creative ability. So I knew nothing about gardening, so I thought I would do it from a creative point of view. And my idea when I started this place, because it was a cornfield, was to create a garden that was different.
The work that's gone into this garden is astounding.
And I think that's what success is. Success is the amount of work you put into what you do well.
When I was told I was coming here, I didn't really think it was a motorcycle ride destination. Just wandering around here and seeing what Pearl's done really is
a true inspiration. And it's a true inspiration purely because Pearl is a shining example that if you put your mind to anything in this mad world, it's possible. Perhaps a real endorsement of what living the American dream is all about. Leaving Pearls, we're staying off Route 1 again to head a little further into sun-kissed rural America, stopping off to reflect on one of South Carolina's most illustrious industries. The one thing that you can't fail to notice as you ride along these roads are the miles and miles of cotton fields. Now, this crop played a massive part in this area's history. And here at the South Carolina Cotton Museum, you can immerse yourself in a fascinating display of how cotton is manufactured and how it served as a constant source of this area's income for generations. If there's one person who knows his natural fabrics from his nylons, it's Jansen, the museum's curator. Am I right in saying that the South was based and built on this stuff?
Oh yes, cotton built the South during the life of the United States.
And does it still today?
Still is a major crop here in America, and especially in the South. We grow a lot of cotton.
Just tell me what they get out of just that.
Well, the fiber here first goes to clothing.
Yeah.
And some of it shows up in bread. The American paper money, so-called paper money, is made out of cotton.
God, so this is actually, it's not paper at all?
No, that's 76% cotton. Inside that seed is a kernel, and that's oil. Wow. And that's the best oil in the world. All oil is graded off of cottonseed oil. That has the highest flash point of any oil. Plastics and all are made out of it. Rocket fuel for the space shuttle comes from this.
So this could be the future in my hand?
Yes.
So you guys can keep your pickups?
That's right.
And I can keep my bike?
That's true. We'll ride together.
As I clamber aboard the Beast to head out of Bishopsville south towards the little town of Camden, it's really heating up, so I've forsaken the leathers for my Beetle jacket. Not exactly the coolest fashion statement, but it still gives me the security of the body armour, held together with mesh to allow a little wind to permeate and provide the perfect riding temperature. It may be ideal now, but the heat and humidity is soon going to become a real issue as we head into Florida, not only for me, but also for the Beast. These roads off Route 1 through South Carolina continue to delight. Perhaps I should have read the Life magazine article that christened Route 1 the ugliest highway in America before setting sail, but as the evening beckons, I arrive at our digs for the night in Camden.
What a fabulous ride. That was perfect. Just the right temperature, no traffic, the bike running pretty well actually. Ah, wonderful. Now, we're here in Camden, and it is a bit odd actually, because this is on the 1, and we haven't been on the 1, and I was just thinking on the way over here, actually the best rides that we've had haven't actually been on Route 1.
As I contemplate how I can actually avoid Route 1 for the rest of the trip, time to head out perhaps into Camden and sample any entertainment that's on offer. Well, just as much as cotton, one type of music is synonymous with South Carolina, and tonight the sleepy town of Camden is rocking to the sound of the blues. Every October, Camden throws its doors open for one long weekend of musical celebration. The night may be young, about 5:30 to be precise, but this huge throng has already gathered to watch their star attraction. Wanda and her band Shrimp City Slim are one of the finest blues bands in the Carolinas. Blues is in the blood here, surely.
Sure, it is. Many of us that are singing the blues, that are playing blues music, many of us started singing or playing our instruments in church. So it is in people's souls, I would say. Whether you're singing some terribly sad song, about your lover left you, for your best friend and your dog got, kicked or something, or if you're singing something that's really funny, people get into it.
I'm convinced that people get into the blues because listening to the often somewhat depressing lyrics makes them feel an awful lot better about what's happening to them in their daily lives. Whether I'm right or not, the wonderful thing is that the love of blues music is a totally inclusive obsession for all ages in these parts. Next morning, my little hotel is bathed in sunshine, and I'm up early, refreshed and eager to get on the road.
Well, what a lovely morning it is here in Camden. Now, you could be fooled probably by all the rain we've had that September, October isn't the time to do this trip. But actually, they get the least precipitation here during the months of September and October. And the skies are absolutely clear this morning, so perfect riding conditions. So today we're going to do the last bit of South Carolina down to Columbia and then on into Georgia.
Well, I'm reacquainting myself with Route 1, heading down only some 35 miles to Columbia, and to my surprise, Route 1 is divine, undistinguishable from the fabulous roads of yesterday. The Beast is also in a good mood as well. All too quickly though, I arrive in Columbia in search of one of America's most famous artists, who specialises in massive murals, and even I can't miss where I'm supposed to meet him. The artist in question goes by the name of Blue Sky, and this was his first gigantic mural painted in 1975 entitled Tunnel Vision.
Blue, they do everything in America on a vast scale, but this is incredible. Was this your first mural?
This is my first big mural. I had done a few small murals like in high school and roundabout.
Did you model it on any vista that you'd seen, or was it just a creation in your head?
It's mostly just a creation, but I did, when the time came to paint these mountains, I did go up to Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina and, you know, look around until I found exactly the ranges that I like, and then I worked for those. This whole mural is based on the first 10 seconds that you see it. If you look at it for longer than 10 seconds, you say, oh man, that's just painted, you know. But I love that 10 seconds of disbelief where they don't know what they're looking at. I hope that they think just for a moment that it's real.
Not content with just enormous murals, Blue is also a sculptor, and you've guessed it, on a rather large scale. Just across the parking lot is another of his creations. This time it's the biggest fire hydrant in the world, seemingly knocked over by a huge passing truck. Hanging out with Blue, admiring some more of his work round the city, is, I think, a fitting end to my ride through the Carolinas. These states have been all about big skies, big countryside, and ultimately big creative expressions. But as the evening sunshine fades, I leave South Carolina and somewhere along the 100-mile ride cruise into Georgia, but its delights will have to wait till the morning.
Well, we've made it to our penultimate state of Georgia, and we're just outside Augusta in a little place called Harlem. Now, Harlem, like everywhere all over America, loves a convention.
And what a strange convention Harlem's version is. This is their annual shindig to celebrate one of their most famous inhabitants.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Oliver Hardy Festival.
Well, you've guessed it, everyone is gathering here in their thousands to celebrate the lives of two of America's most famous comedians, Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. And Oliver particularly has a special place in Harlem's heart.
Now, Harlem was the birthplace of Oliver Hardy, so obviously that's why the convention's here. But the thing that I didn't realise is actually Stan Laurel is a Lancastrian.
Stan and Ollie actually met each other by mistake in Hollywood when they both gravitated to Los Angeles to find fame and fortune all those years ago, and the rest is history. Conventions to us in the UK, I think, are an anathema. The idea of a whole community coming out to celebrate two British comedians, complete with marching bands, cheerleaders, strange floats and weird contraptions, is somewhat absurd, and that's one of the main differences between our two cultures. We look for any excuse to be grumpy and dismissive of the kitsch and the patriotic, where here in America, any opportunity to celebrate their culture and history is embraced by all members of the local population. But the good news is that if you miss the annual parade, either by mistake or on purpose if you're British, you can always check out the wonderful museum here that's open all the year round, dedicated to these comedy legends.
Well, you know what? That was great fun. And whether it's the Laurel and Hardy Festival or not, Harlem is a wonderful little town, and the people, as always round here, are glorious. So we're mounting up to head through the state of Georgia, the 240 miles, to our final state, which is Florida.
As I head out onto the one from Harlem, it quickly becomes apparent that the ride through Georgia is going to seamlessly blend into the joyous experience I've had in North and South Carolina. The road is exquisite, mile upon mile of sun-kissed open vistas, wide and predictable corners, and a distinct lack of cars and trucks. This is what, for me, riding the American dream is all about. It's just a shame that I've had to weave my way through some 750 miles of bleak, grey urban sprawl to find my utopia. So if you're planning a trip down the East Coast, my advice would be to fly to Washington and then head south, avoiding the nightmare I encountered riding from Boston through New York and Philly and down to Washington. As I head into Florida, the evening sun reflects on the modernity of the coastal city of Jacksonville, and all too quickly, my 240-mile ride is alas at an end.
Well, I can safely say that was some of the best days riding I've ever had in America. Brilliant fun. Anyway, we're in Jacksonville and it's Saturday night, so I might do a little bit of dancing.
Well, would you believe it, but Jacksonville is home to at least 2 line dancing champions. And here in a faceless shopping arcade at the Jacksonville Landings, they secretly pay homage to these country and western lumberjack shirted gods. Lucky I'm in a good mood after my ride, otherwise my producer would get a cowboy boot and his Tammy Wynette's for stitching me up.
Lee, okay, you're going to teach me in a minute. Now, what do I need to know about line dancing?
The most important thing you can know about line dancing is it doesn't matter how good you are. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
Amadeus in the house!
As I stumble and fumble my way around the dance floor, I can't help but thinking that line dancing is a total contradiction to the hardened image of the cowboy. Surely to be good at this is much more Winseyette than Wild West, much more about having a tantrum than Texas. But it is without question, I promise you, great fun. It's just doing stuff like this makes me question my very existence.
I'm in a shopping mall in Jacksonville, Florida on a bike trip doing line dancing. I have no idea what's going on, and all I've proved to myself is I'm totally uncoordinated.
Perhaps I should just quit before I embarrass myself any more, or someone mistakes me for Roy Rogers. Next morning, Jacksonville reveals itself in all its rather austere glory.
I still can't quite believe what I did line dancing last night in a shopping mall, but there you go. My first impression of Jacksonville this morning is really kind of a sterile, modern city. The only thing of interest that I can find is that this St. John's River is the only river in the world, apart from the Nile, that runs south to north rather than north to south. And now you know that, there's really nothing else to come to Jacksonville for.
Well, my apologies to anyone who's just bought a riverside apartment here in Jacksonville, but I guess with the housing downturn round here, you've got better things to worry about. But I really don't have time to explore any further, and so my first impressions will have to do. Out on the one, the sun is shining again. It must be in the 90s, but the weather is becoming increasingly humid. Florida is really like riding in a sauna, and as I cruise through St. Augustine, the first ever settlement in North America, the skies are starting to bruise, and us bikers have a sixth sense that rain is not far away. Suddenly, with about 20 miles to our next stop, the heavens open. So soaked, but certainly not sullen, I arrive at one of this coast's legendary venues.
Well, Florida is a massive holiday destination, and it's full of amusements and attractions at every turn. I'd rather eat broken glass than go to Disneyland, but this place is an absolute must.
You've probably guessed already, but this is the Kennedy Space Center and the home to NASA. Here on Cape Canaveral, hundreds of astronauts over the decades have been launched into space, and dotted all over the campus are some of the rather crude and basic-looking crafts that have taken them there. But I've popped in here to experience something supposedly rather special.
Well, this is the Kennedy Space Center's newest attraction, and it's a full simulation of a shuttle launch. I'm a bit nervous, really. I don't know what's going to happen. I've never been sort of partial to fairground rides, but I think I'll make an exception on this one.
As I'm being pointed to the skies, it feels so realistic, and it should do, as the astronauts who've flown the shuttle have all been involved in the ride's development.
2, 1. Oh my God. That's brilliant. 3,000 miles an hour. Oh no. Coming into a bit of space. Oh my God. I think something's fallen off. That's the external tank gone. And now, wow. Man, that's amazing. The roof's coming off now. What a tremendous experience, eh?
This ride cost a staggering $60 million to build, but for my money, it's worth every penny.
Well, there's me being sceptical. That really was brilliant.
Well, as I leave the Space Centre, I've been brought down to land with a bump. While I've been flying around through space, the real world has taken a serious turn for the worse. The night is closing in, and with the Sunday evening traffic heavy, a tropical storm is throwing all its weight at me and the beast. Riding conditions don't get any more unpleasant or dangerous than this. I can barely see the road in front of me, and the bike is fishtailing around all over the place beneath me. 20 years ago I would have just ridden on through, but years of experience have told me that when in doubt, don't.
You know what? I'm just not prepared right now to go any further. There's just something in me that says get off. The rain is horrendous. I'm just going to chill out here for a second. But you know, if it stays bad, we'll just get a gaff here for the night. I'm just not prepared to risk my bottom for anybody.
But after about half an hour of waiting, I'm giving up. The posh hotel down the road will just have to wait.
Well, that's that for the night. Do you know what, sometimes biking, you just think, I'm pushing it, I'm tired, it's pouring with rain, it's dark, I've got about 40 miles to go, and actually at the end of the day there's no point in risking it. Tomorrow morning I'm sure it'll be better, and we can do that little hotel piece in the morning. In the meantime, I've had enough.
Next morning fortunately brings some sunshine, but it doesn't bring any comfort to my worst depression I've had on the trip.
Well, I can't exactly say I'm happy this morning. I think we did make the right decision not going any further. But it's this time of the trip really that you really need to sort of batten down the hatches emotionally and just get through it. But we're going to head down and have a look at one of this coast's greatest hotels, I hope.
I think the real reason why I'm disgruntled is because I hate giving up. I feel that age has caught up with me last night, and I've lost one of my few assets to carry on under great adversity. But as I arrive in Vero Beach, I'm cheering up, basically because I realise that there's one benefit of growing old and emotionally frail. You can just about afford, hopefully, to stay in a hotel like this.
Well, the Days Inn seems a million miles away from here. This hotel is probably one of the finest in Florida, and I feel as though I've been transported to paradise.
And there's good reason why the Costa de Este has such a reputation. Not only is it the height of contemporary cool, but it's also owned by one Gloria Estefan, so a favourite with the celebrity jet set. The rooms are as you'd expect, bright, minimalist and hugely luxurious.
And obviously every room has a wonderful balcony and fantastic views of the beach and the sea. Now the bad news is that this room I should have stayed in last night. And the good news is though, is that rooms like this start at $180 a night.
But as always, time to get on the one and get moving. Because of the rain, I'm a bit behind schedule now, so I need to pedal up to get to Miami tonight. The one out of Vero Beach down to Miami is the main artery for the lifeblood of this state, tourism. It all seems rather bleak, soulless and boring though. I think this would be the last place on earth I'd fork out for a beachside apartment. As night falls, I ride into the heart of Miami, reflecting on its long and illustrious cultural history, that of the legendary 80s TV series Miami Vice. As I reminisce about shoulder pads, Lamborghinis and ill-fitting Armani suits, it starts to rain again and my nostalgia is quickly washed away. The Miami of today will just have to wait till the morning. Morning brings soaring temperatures and glorious sunshine to bask in over a very quick breakfast before heading down the last 200 miles or so of Route 1 to Journey's End in Key West.
Miami obviously is a vast place, and when you're on a ride like this, you can't actually get to see everywhere. So my suggestion really, if you're a party person, is head down to Miami Beach and to Ocean Boulevard down here. And as a young person, you'll basically get everything that you desire. There's nightlife, there's restaurants, there's nightclubs, but most importantly you can people watch. And the News Cafe here is probably one of the most famous places to actually do that from.
As I drag myself away from the News Cafe to waddle down Ocean Boulevard for a brief constitutional before heading out, my first impressions are that this city hasn't really changed much in its ideologies from the heady days of 80s excess. Even the Armani store still remains. There's no doubt that this city jumps to the pulse of youth with its cool, vibrant Art Deco architecture and its myriads of bars and hostelries. It has the vibe of Sin City, rather like Vegas, a feeling that everything here is available. All you have to do is pay through the nose for it. As I ride out, the rush hour is a nightmare. The traffic here is horrendous and the heat is intolerable. As I eventually free myself from both the traffic and my boiling hot Beetle jacket, the one goes down into single lane to head into the Keys. Now, I thought that the road down to Key West was about 20 miles long. Not a bit of it, it's actually around 160. These tropical islands have been linked by the most incredible road bridges stretching over azure blue water. In fact, this route boasts the longest road bridge in the world, traversing some 7 miles of ocean. The ride is breathtaking, quite unlike anything I've experienced. This is the closest you get to riding on water. As the sun beats down, it's only now that I realise how far I've ridden and also how the climate has changed. Only 2 weeks ago, I was riding through countryside akin to England. Now I've been transported to a tropical paradise on this ridiculous slice of American iron. As the yachts and the second homes flash by, I feel a compassion and a real bond with the beast. I've asked it to do some 2,000 miles through torrential rain and heinous traffic when it's only designed to thrill on a Sunday afternoon cruise. But as much as we've had our problems together, like all relationships, it's brought us closer together. Ultimately, it's kept me safe and delivered superb handling and relative comfort, and that's why I actually have so much respect for it. But as the tropical evening sun starts to fade, all too quickly, this mammoth ride is suddenly over.
Well, we've made it. I never thought we would, but we have. And this is the end, this sign here, which says no miles and the end of Route 1. It's on the corner of Fleming and Whitehead. So we've got to Key West. And what's amazing for this trip is we've got here just in time for the sunset.
And after a short amble to the quayside and to North America's southernmost point, there's ample time to soak up the atmosphere.
Well, if you come down to Key West, you've got to see the sunset here at Mallory Square. Now, it is a beautiful place, but like all these areas, it's full of street traders, street musicians, and young people trying to find themselves.
Key West has always attracted the waifs and strays that immerse themselves in this laid-back, boho-type environment that this place does so well. But one thing's for sure, the sunset here is truly magnificent for everyone to behold, and is a fitting backdrop to the final chapter of my 2 weeks on the road.
Well, as the sun goes down here on Key West and Mallory Square, perhaps it's time to reflect on whether Route 1 was truly a world's greatest motorcycle ride. Route 1, and especially the northeast coast, was on reflection one of the hardest rides I've had in America. Stifling traffic, loads of bike problems, and an overwhelming feeling of oppressive freneticism. And its memory really tarnished the rest of the ride after Washington. The Carolinas and Georgia, though, I will never forget. Rarely do you get the opportunity to ride mile after mile of superb roads in beautiful weather. But then we hit Florida with its ridiculous humidity and often lethal riding conditions. Then, yet again, it all changes, and I ride into the Keys to indulge in some of the most glorious tropical coastal riding in the world. But the huge problem for me is that, in essence, the real cost of this ride has been on my emotions, and there have been times where I've spiritually, physically and mentally reached rock bottom. So if I was really honest, I don't really think Route 1 is truly a world's greatest motorcycle ride, but what it surely is an epic adventure.